Well, thank you very much for staying with us on the AM show. And Parliament is on recess. Members of Parliament have been voting on a number of issues at this current sitting. They passed the new e-levy, which has been reduced to 1%, which with a daily threshold of 100 Ghana cedis retained. They also had the VAT increased by 2.5%. The appropriations bill has also been passed. And interestingly, in the National Cathedral issue, we'll be talking about all of those and the debt exchange program as well, for which now the pension funds will be exempt. Well, joining us for those conversations, we have a string of guests who will be participating in this conversation. Al-Hassan Suini is Member of Parliament, Tamale North. Samuel Bing is Executive Director, Parliamentary Network Africa. Eugene Boakye-Ntwi, he's been in the news a lot lately. He is the Member of Parliament for Subin constituency, and Dr. Kwesi Amache is a political scientist. And with me in the studio, the evergreen Bernice Abu-Baidoo Lansah.
Maybe ever blue, because today I'm wearing something blue. Good morning to you. How are you doing?
Charlie, this morning, on a more serious note. But
the body has reached its limit.
It has past its limit.
Oh, you'll be fine. You'll be fine.
The mileage on it this year has been...
it's been an intense
The French would
year.
say épuisé. I am not tired. I am beyond tired. I am something, but
Yeah,
for God and country.
Yeah, it's been quite an intense year. I mean, even considering all that we've been through as a nation. If you look at how we started the year and all the drama and the, and the fluctuations and everything. Look, but hey, we're here, aren't we? And so it's a good time to reflect, give thanks. And that's why we are having this conversation this morning as Parliament goes on recess to talk about the major happenings and all the drama in Parliament as well. This year, we've seen quite some activity in Parliament, haven't we?
This eighth Parliament has been exciting. It's a political scientist's dream.
I know.
Split right down the middle with one moving this side, the Fomena MP, second deputy speaker, and everything else from the e-levy voting to, and we're still seeing it.
Yeah.
We're still seeing it. Okay, so you want us to do this for you, take out this 80 million for the National Cathedral. The threshold for the e-levy must remain. And you can tell that if these numbers were not in place in Parliament, obviously the majority would have just run roughshod.
Most likely.
Over the process.
Most likely. But like
anyway.
I said, so you need some rest,
and I'll be getting it.
Going into the weekend. And even for you, on Monday, we have the Joy FM Family Party in the park, and it's going to be exciting from 9 a.m. till you say, I'm tired, I can't have this anymore. So it's 100 cedis for a family of 6, Benjamin. Yeah, that's just...
This is the Donkomi price. Anyway,
right.
So we'll get into the conversations, and Bernice, I know you're looking forward to it. We have our guests lined up, Al-Hassan Suini, Samuel Bing. We have Honorable Ntwi, the Subin MP, and we also have Dr. Kwesi Amache. Let me start with you. Maybe I should start with the parliamentarians since you are going on recess. Mr. Suini, let's just do a mic check if you'd like. Mr. Suini, a very good morning to you, sir.
Good morning, my brother. Hope you are well. And good morning to your crew and your viewers as well. Right.
We are well, definitely. God has been gracious to us. Once you see us here,
we thank God.
Parliament is on recess, but it's been a hubbub of activity from the appropriations bill, which you have given assent to some of the other happenings. Now, the last time the finance minister was in Parliament, there was talk about the National Cathedral, and the funding now is supposed to go into infrastructure, roads. But I would like to find out from you, what has been your assessment, I'll put that to both of you members of Parliament, of this 8th Parliament in the year 2022? If I asked you to give me a summary of how the House has performed, what would you say?
Well, maybe in one sentence, I'll say it is beginning to find its way onto living up to the expectations of many Ghanaians. It started on a jittery note, and it was expected because the composition of this parliament is like we have never had before. It's unique, and it also, in its uniqueness, brought about higher expectations among the Ghanaian people, justifiable so. But because it was also unique, members had to, if you like, grope in the dark and along the line begin to even, introduce things that are not or were not anticipated by those who first drafted the standing orders and all. But if you look at what we have been able to achieve in 2022, I'll say that finally, it looks like we are beginning to get a grip on it, and we are beginning to, perhaps be more clearer with how we approach things to the understanding of the generality of Ghanaians. I mean, for example, when the minority attempted to censure the finance minister, it was, a path that no parliament really has undertaken before. The first time it was tried, it did not get as far as this one got. And so it was quite unique. And the Speaker of Parliament, Alban Sumana Badwin, deserved tons and tons of commendation for his ability to draw from his experience as the longest, serving member of Parliament to lead the House in these very unique times. He was able to introduce a procedure that was not anticipated in the censuring of a minister. And that procedure that he introduced helped to clarify the situation better and also got the public more involved in the whole censure motion. At the end of the day, yes, as a minority group, we failed to attain our ultimate objective, which was to have the motion, carried, to have the motion win. But unfortunately, we knew that we needed 2/3 to be able to get that pass. And we also knew we didn't have the numbers to get 2/3. But we're hoping for a collaboration between our side and the majority side, especially given the fact that some of its members had declared their, disapproval of the finance minister. We thought we were going to get that collaboration. But when it came to living, or if you like, acting the words that were uttered, unfortunately, they developed cold feet and could not join us. But that for me was, all in all, a very, very good process. And it has enriched our democracy, it has enriched our parliament, and it has established, if you like, a standard that will be followed and perhaps improved upon by subsequent parliaments.
Right.
And those are some of the reasons why I feel that we are beginning to have a grip on it. And you also, a while ago, went through some of the, give and take that occurred during the consideration of the 2023 budget statement. That wouldn't have been possible in previous parliament. And I wonder if that can be attained or achieved in future parliaments, especially when those parliaments are not, composed in the way that this parliament is currently composed. So we are beginning to take advantage of the unique composition of the 8th parliament to enrich our democracy and enrich our parliamentary practices in my view.
Right. Mr. Sweeney, I'll just put this to you and put it to your colleague MP as well, Mr. Boakye Antwi, and then we can move the conversation forward. Bernice will be taking the conversation forward. But I'd like to find out from you, very quickly, these two angles. Your minority leader, Haruna Idrisu, said that Parliament, he admitted, had failed in some respects. For example, in holding the executive to account, especially in the dispensement or using of funds. And he cites the excessive borrowing in this administration, but also in other administrations. What's your thought on that? And when you're done answering that, I hope it's brief, just give me your assessment so far. This 8th Parliament, on a scale of 1 to 10, what score would you give the august House of Parliament? Quick thoughts?
Well, I lost you at some point, but I will answer based on the understanding that I got.
So let me do this quickly.
I
Minority Leader Haruna Idrisu has said Parliament has failed in some regard in terms of checking the executive. Part of it, excessive borrowing. How do you react to that? And how would you assess, on a scale of 1 to 10, the 8th Parliament? Very frankly.
Well, it will be, I think that too limiting to measure the work of Parliament, especially the 8th Parliament.
You've done something for a while now. I'm just asking, up to this point, how would you assess it, 1 to 10?
No, I will get there. I'm saying that if you happen, I'm saying it will be too limited to assess the contribution of Parliament, especially this 8th Parliament, to just how much a government has borrowed. I don't think it will be fair to assess, the working of Parliament and whether it has lived up to expectation merely based on how much it has allowed a government to borrow. That's the point I seek to make first. But if the minority leader is, just using that as an example of some of the failings of Parliament, then I am unable to disagree with him. Because yes, there are other oversight roles that Parliament, can still do better in, as far as giving the people effective representation is concerned. And I am not one to say that we have been perfect. Parliament can still do better. There's still more room for improvement. But that is not to say that we have not, in the last couple of years, especially in this Fourth Republic, lived up to the bill as Parliament is required to. Okay. Yes, there are some shortcomings, and I'm hoping that moving forward we will rise over those shortcomings. But on the scale of 1 to 10, I think that especially this year, I will give this 8th Parliament 8 out of 10.
8 out of 10 for the 8th Parliament. Okay.
Especially for this year.
All right. Thank you so much. Let me just take same thoughts from the Subin MP, Eugene Boakye Antwi. A very good morning to you, Mr. Antwi. All right. So we'll try to get Mr. Boakye Antwi to deliver his thoughts. But I'll bring in Sami Obeng, since we started from Parliament. What would be your assessment of the work of the 8th Parliament so far? And on a scale of 1 to 10, what would you be giving them as by way of a score?
Thank you, Benjamin. Well, the 8th Parliament has gone way into its mandate, 2 years out of 4. And we have seen 2 different years, so to speak. We saw a first year where at the beginning of it, citizens had very high expectations of a new parliament that by the sheer numbers, we knew that it should be able to deliver, better than we had seen previous parliaments deliver on, especially on oversight of the executive branch, because we've known that the legislative function of parliament, they've always been able to perform that creditably, but the oversight and then the representation of the people had usually been the shaky note. Many of the high expectations that we had of Parliament did not really materialize in the first session, which is the first year of Parliament. I mean, started on a very terrible note on the 7th of January, last year, and ended on an even more terrible, note with all the things that happened with the budget sessions of last year. And so you'll recall that we entered into this year with some very gloomy feeling about our legislature and its ability to deliver on its mandate. I must say that this year has been a bit different. They've not gotten to where we all expect them to get to. It is halfway, half time if we were playing football at the World Cup. A good time for them to, take a good rest and assess what they themselves have been able to do. But if you ask me on a scale of 1 to 5, considering all the things that have happened,
1 to 10 actually.
Scale of 1 to 10, sorry. Considering all the things that have happened from the beginning of Parliament this 8th Parliament, including the 7th January issue right up to now. And the fact that many of these issues, even we've not brought finality to it, I'll put them around a mid-level. So 5 out of 10 for me.
5 out of 10, right.
And interesting, Sammy. Bernice here. So we've seen some interesting days to Parliament going on recess. Talk of the budget and what's been approved so far. We've seen the shooting down of the 80 million cedis that government was hoping to push towards the National Cathedral project. The e-levy, initially we were told when the finance minister read the budget that it was now going to be at 1% and the daily threshold was going to be scrapped. But the parliamentarians managed to push against that, though maintaining the 1%, we still have the 100 cedi threshold. How does this all play for you, considering that, like you just said, the expectations of many people was that we will see a more robust parliament, a parliament that wouldn't just be a rubber stamp one. How did the last few days turn out for you?
Well, in fact, I must say that this parliament earned my 5 over 10 because of the happenings within the last few days. Honestly, I think the last few days have shown that there is really, really promise with this 8th Parliament, provided that they can be able to stick to and deliver what exactly the people of Ghana are expecting them to deliver on. Remember that in the past, what we have had is the 8th Parliament raising our expectations so high, telling us about things that they would definitely not compromise on. And then when the votes are cast and when the chips fall, we recognize how they disappoint all of us. We saw that in some ministerial appointment situation. Of course, the minority did their best so far as the censure motion is concerned. They did not have the cooperation of the other colleagues. But we've seen that also in many other instances during this 8th Parliament. But over the last couple of days, and considering also that, there are some of the things that it is important that we mention them so that when Parliament is doing well, we can commend them the same way that we would, they had to spend the entire day on Wednesday, sitting, and it eats into the early mornings of Thursday. I woke up at around 4 a.m. on Thursday morning and saw that they were still sitting and just about wrapping up, and you saw all the amazing things going through the recordings of the sitting of that particular day. You saw the amazing things that they were able to do. This shows us that Parliament has so much power. Parliament is able to deliver on a lot of amazing stuff if they put their minds to it, if they both put their shoulders to the wheel. There were some of these issues that they agreed to, like scrapping the special development initiatives bit, like scrapping the Secretariat for MNE, which were consensus agreements even at the level of the Finance Committee, which meant that both sides, agreed to it because they realized that these things are duplications. These things are not helping us, especially in these very dire moments. So yes, the last couple of days have been amazing. And for me, I say that more of these, Parliament, the 8th Parliament, we want to see more of these, really.
Yeah. Mr. Suhuyini, I'll be coming to you shortly. Apologies for that. Mr. Suhuyini, I'll be coming to you shortly. But Sami, it's interesting you talk about how deep into the 9th Parliament sat on one of these past few days. But there's also a lot of concern about absenteeism. We've seen organizations like Odikro come up strongly against that. And that reminds me of what you said earlier this year when we were discussing the Adwoa Safo issue, and you said you would be scandalized if she came back and still retained her seat. Well, as it is now, she's still MP for Dom Kwabena. As we assess Parliament in this last sitting, what are your thoughts today, seeing that Adwoa Safo is still where she is and absenteeism is still a big problem in Parliament?
Yes, one of the things that we are doing at Parliamentary Network Africa, and very soon before they resume for the 3rd session, we'll be putting it out, is that we're trying to compare the first 2 years of this 8th Parliament to the first 2 years of previous parliaments, especially when it comes to matters of attendance, when it comes to matters of bills passed, when it comes to matters of actual delivery because we think that it is important to be able to attach some level of empirical evidence to these issues. Because I personally hold the view, having looked through the votes and proceedings of previous parliaments and this one, I really do not think that absenteeism has been a very bad situation in this current parliament as compared to some of the previous, except that this current parliament has also been bold enough to be able to call out some of their own who have not done so well so far as attendance matters is concerned. However, like I told you about the disappointment situation, they raised the tempo so high, they put Honorable Adjo and two others before the Privileges Committee. They spend a lot of time grilling them. They provide Adjo, for example, to for the want of a better word, abuse all of the systems that are in place at committee level for interrogating such matters, and yet plenary is failing to be able to take these matters forward because of sheer partisan politics. The same way that Speaker Barbin promises about investigating the 7th January situation, the scandal, the debacle of 7th January, indicating that leadership is looking into it and they will be coming back to us. 7th January 2023 is just around the corner. 2 years down the line, we've seen absolutely nothing so far as concluding the matter is concerned. Meanwhile, their peers in the US legislature had a similar situation around that same time. We've seen how they've been able to, bring some finality, so to speak, on the matter because they've been able to show the citizens that they take some of these matters very, very seriously. And for me, those are the low sides, of this parliament. If parliament, the 8th parliament particularly, will be able to mop up these low ends and will be able to focus on some of the great things that they've been able to do in the last couple of days on this particular budget, then we will have an 8th parliament that will be an amazing, piece to be able to study. I think Benjamin started by saying that the current 8th parliament is an awesome piece for any political scientist, studying parliamentary development work. Absolutely, but you see, it goes beyond just what they are doing. We need to see more. And honestly, yes, I am scandalized still about the Honorable MP for Dom Kwabena still being in Parliament. I am particularly disappointed that Parliament has not been able to stamp its feet. When they were going on the last recess, it was taken on the very final day. The Speaker promised that, well, we are going to go back. I'll bring a reason, a conclusion onto the matter, and we'll be able to settle on this. But we've still not seen much. It's really disappointing.
Talking about political scientists being interested in what's happening in our parliament currently, we have Dr. Kwesi Amachi joining us. Good morning to you, Doc. I want to believe that you have heard from our two guests. What are your quick thoughts on some of the issues they've shared? And for you as a political scientist, would you say that Parliament is finally growing to the point of the expectation of Ghanaians, or we shouldn't be too excited with what we're seeing? What will the indicators be for you to say that, yes, we are getting there?
Opportunity, and let me say good morning to your viewers and to yourselves and my colleagues. Actually, what's happening to me isn't something I'll credit Parliament itself. I'll go back to the people of Ghana,
right,
who gave us the type of Parliament they gave us, meaning that people have issues with the performance of Parliament, critically deliberation on issues, exercising oversight responsibility on government. And then, related to this, the issue that the minority leader relates to, his claim that Parliament has a hand in the challenge Ghana has on its hand now is critical. It speaks to the fact that Parliament simply relates to Ghanaian issues from positions relatively different from what Ghanaians expect them to have. And for that matter, the interests that drive their actions and inactions. Is Parliament now beginning to set up? It is not necessarily so. I like it that the last speaker feels that he's scandalized by the presence of Adjo. in the parliament. That tells you the interest that drives, parliamentary activities,
Right.
and stuff like that. So I think Ghanaians have still got to put a lot of pressure on the parliament to do what we want for us, and,
Right.
and to do this simply parliamentarian. Okay.
Please proceed.
If I should stop here, otherwise.
No, please proceed.
Great. Good. Parliamentarians are necessarily afraid of just one thing: the next elections. And so, if they realize that they are going to be punished for taking some actions in Parliament and not taking other actions, that they are going to be punished for their actions and inactions in Parliament, then they will sit up. As at now, what I see is party-driven, party interest driving parliamentary activities. It is still so much with our parliament, rather than they addressing themselves to issues that come from concerns of Ghanaians. So that is only how I see things. Are they beginning to pick up? Somehow, but it's not enough.
Right.
It's not enough at all.
Doc, so would you say that Parliament then, especially the majority MPs, lost a fine opportunity to cement your point that this was more of a push from Ghanaians and not necessarily Parliament itself?
My line is not helping.
Hello, Doc,
My
can you
line
hear
is
me?
not helping. I didn't get a question.
Hello,
Yes.
Doc, can you hear me now?
Yes, now I can hear you.
Great. I'm asking if Parliament lost a fine opportunity to cement your point about Ghanaians having more representation, as should be the case. And I'm speaking specifically to the issue with the stay of the finance minister in office. We saw that majority of the MPs of the NPP were asking the president to let him go. And when we spoke to some of them here, they said that is what their constituents wanted. Later, we saw them backtracking and all that. In regards to the people having more of an impact on what their representatives do in Parliament, how can we work better at that, at achieving that?
That is a critical issue because in one breath, members of the majority claim that they would like the finance minister to go. In another breath, they wouldn't want to go about it the way the minority wanted the issue, to be addressed. And to me, that's confusion. The finance minister is still, in office. How do we address this? If indeed it did come from their constituents, the way they claim that they went home and their constituents had issues with that. If indeed that is true, and they were not doing just politics in the MPP, where the members of parliament found an opportunity to free themselves from, I would say, the clutches, the control of the executive. And it's simply to me because of the timing. We're getting to the end of the tenure of the president, and like it happens in almost all democratic jurisdictions, his authority begins to wane. Now they come in strongly to behave like that. I don't think it did come from their constituents. Otherwise, they couldn't backtrack. They were doing politics as usual, something to benefit themselves. They all have issues with the finance minister, but somehow over the period that the man has been in office, they have had to keep quiet. I'd like to visit the minority leaders issue. What happened and Parliament supervised over, the contracting of the loan facilities? Anytime they came for more, didn't they subject the previous one to scrutiny to tell themselves, what the money has been used for and whether it's been used, well for Ghanaians? Then they went ahead always to approve. And today we are saying that we are not able to manage our loans domestically and internationally, such that even the IMF is dragging its feet to give us money. How did we get here? What is the role of Parliament its complicity in this. So all these tell us that Parliament has not necessarily been there for the people. They are there for themselves, they are there for their party. What can we do to control that? Elections, vote the rascals out. That is the only thing in politics. Bring checks and balances to the actions and inactions of members of Parliament.
Let me come to you, Mr. Suhuyini, and thank you so much for holding on. So this was quite an interesting point in Parliament where the two opposing sides wanted the same thing, yes, wanted to use different routes to achieve that. I found out from some of your other colleagues what they felt about that. I'm not sure I've heard your thoughts on it. Do you mind sharing with us what you think about the action of your colleagues on the other side with regards to getting the finance minister out of office?
Yes, I think that what stood in the way of our colleagues on the majority side was partisanship. Otherwise, there's no other way to explain their decision to approach the removal of the finance minister using a different route than the route that we on the minority side chose. If we all wanted the same thing and we were going to rise above partisanship, there was absolutely no reason why we could not collaborate, to get the censure motion through. Because like I did explain to some of our colleagues on the majority side when we negotiated to convince them to join the fight, that if you look at the Constitution, it is not imperative, it's not mandatory for the president to allow a minister that has been censured to go. The article that is used there is may. The president may act on the censure motion or not. And so when they claim that the president had given them assurance that the man was going to leave office after the budget and after the IMF deal, my position or my point to them was that, yes, why don't you make, as we say here, assurance double sure by just joining us to pass the motion of censure? Because the motion, once passed, will not even compel the president to remove the finance minister the next day. It will still allow him time to do it at the time that he has assured you he will do it. But you are just making assurance double sure by ensuring that you join us to make the motion succeed. But they wouldn't because of partisanship. And so for me, what stood in the way of collaboration between us and our colleagues was just their focus on partisanship and the fact that they did not want it to look like, some sort of political victory for the NDC if this motion succeeded. And so they just wanted us to fail with it. But I think that was quite unfortunate because at least this would have been one of the times that we could have used to demonstrate to people publicly, even though we have so many times where we have collaborated and worked together on. The often cliche is that we only agree to work together when it is about our welfare. I think this was a missed opportunity for us to show to the Ghanaian people that we can together collaborate in the interest of our citizens, especially given the mess in which our economy is in as a result of very clueless and incompetent decisions that have been taken by the economic management team, which unfortunately is spearheaded in terms of implementation by the finance minister.
Right, so just a quick one. The president, as we were told by the MPs after their meeting with him, was that they could begin to talk about whether Mr. Ofori-Atta would stay in office after that IMF deal was secured. It wasn't emphatic that he was going to let him go after that. But for you, I mean, looking at what the work you've been able to achieve so far, and you scoring 8 out of 10, do you get a sense that the people you as a person, Mr. Suhuyini, represent are satisfied with the kind of work that is being delivered on the floor of Parliament?
Yes, to some extent, Bernice. I am not too much in disagreement with Sami's rating when he rates Parliament overall, with a figure of 5 out of 10. Remember when I rated 8, I said in relation to this year, 2022.
Okay.
So I was speaking in specific terms of 2022, how this 8th Parliament has performed. But if you broaden it to perhaps how the Parliament has performed 2 years after its composition, I may come down to 5 or 6, just as my brother has done. But in relation to how we have worked this year, I still think that we are beginning to get our grip on what is expected of us. And I'm quite confident that my electorates, those who gave me the mandate to represent them in Tamale North, are beginning to appreciate the role that I am supposed to play better, especially when it comes to providing oversight and holding the government to account, and also leading development, in my constituency, either by way of initiating same or lobbying for same to be carried out. I think that, especially when you listen to my brother Sami, he makes the point that there have been some disappointments in the past, and sometimes we raise the aspirations of people and we dash it. Yes, that is true. But also in some cases, especially in the beginning, it was because of the misunderstanding of the parliamentary process. And so if you said things that you were going to do within your capacity and it was not properly understood, even when you delivered within your capacity, it was still seen as a mark of failure. For example, before now, perhaps people would not have appreciated the fact that the minority on its own did not have the capacity to censure a minister. And so they would have held the minority responsible for a failure of, the motion that was seeking to censure the minister. But over the period and through discussions, people are beginning to know the capacity of the minority. And so, for example, when you had the situation with the appointments committee had recommended some ministers for approval and others for disapproval, if I'm permitted to put it that way. Yet, when the plenary, in its wisdom, decided to vote for those ministers to remain in office, the appointments committee and its members still came under attack because people perhaps at the time did not understand the different working procedures in Parliament. So clearly, with this censure motion, I think the clarity was there that as a minority, we did not have the 2/3 that is required to censure the minister, but were willing to undertake the process, hoping that we'll get collaboration from our colleagues on the majority side. We did not have that collaboration, and the motion failed, and the minority is not held responsible for the failure of the motion. Generally, it is believed that the move in itself has enriched our democratic practice.
Right.
And
On that particular issue of the motion and how it went about, your chief whip, Muntaka Mubarak, has said that the Speaker of Parliament is becoming a tyrant. He says he's turning Parliament into a palace. He actually compares him to his predecessor, Mr. Michael Quay, and says that Prof Michael Quay was better when it came to consensus building. Your quick thoughts on that, and then we can move on with the other guests.
Well, I will not know all the bases upon which the minority chief whip, came to the conclusion that he came to. Whatever it is, I think that it was unfortunate that he, made it public, even if he had any basis whatsoever to come to that conclusion. I still think that given the channels of communication, especially within Parliament and outside Parliament, within the National Democratic Congress, I still feel that it could have been handled in a better way, even if he had any basis to come to that conclusion. I mean, at the level of leadership, a lot of negotiations, a lot of communication takes place. And so he's in a better place to know if Professor Michael Quay, builds consensus more than Speaker back then. What I do know personally is that there have been periods that I have had frustrations with, the way Speaker Bagwin has gone about things on the floor. Personally, I've had, serious frustrations. But most times, with time and upon hindsight, I come to appreciate the wisdom with which he handled the things that he handled in the manner that he did, which gave me frustration. So, but like I've said, I'm not in a position to have all the details that Muntaka Mubarak may have had, for which reason he came to the conclusion that he came to. And I will say he's entitled to that position based on perhaps the information that he may have that is not available to me.
No, he basically spoke about the creation of a committee to hear the censure motion before the report was brought to the floor of Parliament.
Right, Bernice, and like I said, I mean, there have been times that the Speaker has taken decisions that I have had I've had issues with. I have felt frustrated by the way he went about taking the decisions in the manner that he did. For example, when he referred the finance minister to this ad hoc committee with co-chair persons, I was uncomfortable on the floor. And even though I did not catch his eye, my frustration, was visible. And maybe if the cameras captured it, it will bear me out. I was not at that point convinced that it was the right thing to do. And somehow I am still not very convinced that it was the, procedure that should have been used per our standing orders. But I also have come to understand that the procedure is not too clear when it comes to a motion to censure a minister. It's not too clear. So my understanding may be different from Speaker Bagwin's understanding. And for him, this was an opportunity to establish a clear procedure when it comes to censuring, a minister. I mean, it is clear when you are doing it for a speaker and a president or a vice president. But with the minister, it is not too clear in our standing orders and in the Constitution. So for him, it was an opportunity to establish a clear procedure. Right. And having followed later, when I followed the committee's work, I saw the wisdom in why he did that. I may have had frustrations in the beginning when he did that, but when I followed the work of the committee, I think we could have taken advantage of it more than we did as a minority group. But I also saw the wisdom in why, the committee was established. And,
right.
and so, for that matter, I do not really fault the Speaker on it.
And that wisdom you talk about, sorry, Benjamin will come through shortly. I want to know what it is. What was it that convinced you that this was a wise decision taken by the Speaker?
Well, you see, what do you call it? In censuring a minister, the Constitution and our standing orders require you to give the minister the opportunity to be heard. Now, what is not stated clearly is how he can be heard. For example, if he wants to be heard through a council, it is not properly, stated in the Constitution or the standing orders. How to allow a council to represent the minister if he wants to be heard through a council. But if he wants to be heard as a minister, the minister is already, a non-voting member of Parliament, and so can be heard on the floor in the course of the debate of a motion to censure him. The minister personally, if he wants to be heard, can be heard. But if he wants to be heard through a lawyer, through a counsel, it is not clear, because the lawyer is not a non-voting member of Parliament. And assuming the lawyer is not a non-voting member of Parliament, such a lawyer will not have space on the floor of Parliament to represent the minister. And so, giving the minister the opportunity to appear before, the ad hoc committee that was created with his counsel, I thought was a wise decision, because that lawyer would not have had space on the floor of Parliament to, represent the minister in the manner that he did before the committee. So I think it was a wise decision. And I also thought that it was another way of, involving the public, because if you notice, the committee advertised its sittings and even requested, people who were interested in the matter to also appear with evidence. And I think that was also a mark of wisdom, which has enriched our democracy, because if we're just to debate the motion in Parliament, such individuals and organizations such as PIAC and others would not have had space to contribute to, the motion on the floor, the way that they had the opportunity to contribute before the committee. So all in all, I personally had frustrations when it was first referred to the committee. But when I followed the sittings, I saw the wisdom in why Speaker Bagwe.
Right. Gentlemen, let me come in at this juncture. I'd like to run this by all three of you, starting with Dr. Amachi. I just want your brief take on the pros and cons of having a hung parliament, so to speak, like we do. We have a majority side, a minority side, but it's very close. If you look at what happened, the vote, one of the recent votes in Parliament from yesterday, it was 135 to 136, okay? I'd like to find out from you what you think the pros and cons have been, maybe with a bit of a focus on the negatives, because we've seen quite a bit of the positives. Dr. Amachi.
Focusing on the negatives, this will, to me, be the issue of time. The issue of time that will go into Parliament's ability to decide on an issue and bring finality to it. I think that will be the only thing. Otherwise, it's so good because they are forced to come into consensus, and that will reflect the interests of society. Anytime Parliament works by consensus, by accommodation, cooperation, societal interests get saved.
For you, Mr. Obeng. Oh, but before Mr. Obeng comes in, so the positives, Dr. Amachi, just to highlight, what would be the standout positive for you? The fact that they are able to push the majority to the wall and maybe get decisions reflective of the masses? What would it be before Samuel Obeng comes through? Dr. Amachi?
No, just like I said, serving societal interest when it has to be.
All right. Yeah. All right. Sammy?
Yes, Benjamin, let me first start by saying that the situation we have could have been worse when it comes to the outputs it delivers. If we look at situations of other countries, even within the region, West Africa region, that has experienced hung parliament. The last 5 years in the Parliament of Sierra Leone has been very chaotic because the ruling party did not have majority in that particular parliament. And so for those of us who, by the nature of our work, study parliaments and the way they work in different jurisdictions, we know that even this, our situation, could have brought more chaos than we had experienced. So it could have been worse. I just think that I needed to establish that. I mean, in those other jurisdictions, because people wanted to play politics and get the numbers, there were arrests of members of parliament, left, right, center, all manner of, scandalous things happening, and remember that we had some people had even warned that we could have such instances where, because of the sheer numbers, people may play games with the numbers and may want to harm individual members of parliament just so that the numbers will favor one party or the other. However, having said that, it is instructive to note that some of the negatives that this brought is that it exposed the non-readiness of the standing orders of parliament itself and the systems and structures that are existent in parliament towards a situation like this. And for me, it is good that parliament is in the process of reviewing its standing orders. This is a time for them to be able to use the lessons and learnings from all of the things that happened in the last 2 years to better improve, the standing orders of parliament. Another thing that it exposed, which also comes to the negative, is that it has shown that parliamentarians, especially those of them at leadership, have not built that consensus building mentality well enough. Because this is the best time for consensus. His Excellency the President, in his inaugural speech for his second term, indicated that he thinks that the Almighty God had given us this kind of parliament because he thinks God wants both parties to work together. Unfortunately, both parties have not exhibited their abilities or, in some instances, willingness to work together in a collective towards the common good of Ghana. So that has also been exposed during this period. Of course, it has also exposed the fact that Parliament in itself, sometimes do not hold its own to account, for which reason its own sometimes feel that they are empowered to do all manner of things. So that because nobody was held to account on the 7th of January 2021's incidents, people decide they could budget a period and what have you. However, there are some positives. For me, one of the notable positives is that in the last 2 years, our budget processes have not been the same. And for me, that is good. The power of the purse function that Parliament has to play in appropriating funds for the executive to use have been significantly different in the last 2 years than we have seen in the past. And that's a very, very good milestone for this 8th Parliament. However, there certainly is still more room for improvement.
Al-Hassan, you are there. You're in the thick of things. From what you've seen, what do you think have been the pros and the cons, briefly, on that point? Because there's a lot more I'd like to nail down subsequently. Let's hear from you, sir.
Well, I think that, like you indicated, the pros may be widely known by many. The fact that you tend to have the minority not only having its say, but in some cases having its way is quite unique about this Parliament. And I have said from day one that as a country, we should be able to take advantage of this unique composition of Parliament to make it a Parliament of reference for the future. Because I do not think that we will get this same composition maybe in the next decade or two. The worst that can happen now, I have said repeatedly, is to have a government forming minority in Parliament. But we have seen how in the past governments with majority have bullied Parliament and made it rubber stamp. What we haven't seen is this equal numbers. And I'm saying it doesn't look likely that we'll have that, for a very long time to come. And that is why we must take advantage of this 8th Parliament to make it a Parliament of reference. And in the first year, it didn't look good, but I am becoming hopeful that we are beginning to, get our grip together. I keep repeating that because it's very, very important to me that we are beginning to get our grip, and hopefully we will be able to establish this 8th Parliament as a Parliament of reference. So in terms of the things that haven't really worked out well because of the numbers that we have, maybe on the government side, they will complain about delay because sometimes these days, before they even introduce something, they need to engage more, they need to consult more, and all of that. And so it may be seen as a negative. But for me, as a governance watcher, I think that it is good for good governance because more channels of communication is opened and more engagement leads to better policies. The president, yes, Sami made reference to his opening, his inaugural speech. Unfortunately, he has not demonstrated, leadership enough as far as the need for building consensus is concerned. I do know that he hardly reaches out to the main players, in the opposition. He hardly does that. Even when he does through, agents that can be trusted and all of that. And you recall last year, his remark at the party's conference in Kumasi after the appropriation was passed for the budget led to tensions, which eventually culminated even in the delay in the passage of the e-levy, because leadership of the House had built consensus to get the appropriation passed without major resistance, despite the fact that the minority initially had indicated that they were going to oppose appropriation. But when the party had a conference the weekend after the appropriation was passed in Kumasi, the president, gave marching orders to the majority and indicated that he was hearing noise that there was no majority in Parliament, and that his group constituted the majority, and they must go and pass the e-levy. And so it just unnecessarily, heated the House up and did not augur well for consensus.
Right. Let me bring in some other angles in terms of money, the purse of the state, and some of where we're heading. So 2 issues to start with that I want to run by you. The first has to do with Parliament cutting off some 17 million cedis. And I'll start with you, Dr. Amakye. I'll go to each one of you on this. Parliament cutting some 17 million cedis from the original allocation to the Office of Government Machinery. We're talking about the budget slashed for the Special Development Initiatives, Monitoring and Evaluation Secretariat. All of those has been cancelled. About 17 million Ghana cedis off. Then you look at the National Cathedral and the 80 million Ghana cedi allocation that was made to it. Interestingly, there was no proper justification, not from the Finance Ministry, not from the Tourism Ministry. I don't know how it ended up under tourism, though. But what do these make in terms of statements, Dr. Amakye? And maybe you can add your thoughts about the National Cathedral specifically and where it's headed. We were told about seed money. I think I'll start with Samir being on that. We were told about seed money, and now seed money has become a sum that no one knows what it will extend to by stretch of money. Samir Bing, would you like to start for us?
Yes, for me, the biggest statement is that our elected legislators have shown that they cannot be like us, who only have platforms such as this and our respective social media platforms to vent and to complain. For them, beyond the complaint, there are tools for them to actually take action, because some of the things that, are happening in our country that has plunged us into the situation we currently find ourselves, some of them could have been avoided. And some of them could have been avoided if the people's representatives, put their foot to the ground as strongly as they are doing now. Special Development Initiative Secretariat under the Office of the President around this time, extremely needless, when you have constituted by members from both sides, indicates their unwillingness to be able to give money to fund that particular secretariat, then you are happy. In this era where we are sinking so badly, Christian as I am, would this be the best time for a national cathedral? The people are speaking and the people are saying, no, this is not the best time for it. Yes, the cathedral is necessary, but this may not be the best time for it, especially when we've been told that public money was not going to be used and that it was going to be funded purely through private donations and that the public was only going to donate some form of assets, to this cause. And so, yes, when you have your legislature stamping its feet in this particular area, it sends a very strong signal. Not only that, we heard about the Office of the Special Prosecutor and how they've been starved of funds. And we saw the move by Parliament to the extent that they insisted that the Ministry of Finance brings a letter confirming that it is willing to pay off the arrears before some of the things that the ministry also expects through the appropriation will go through. And the ministry had to oblige, so now they can be able to take the minister to the Government Assurances Committee if he fails on that particular bit. This is how parliaments can stand in for the people who have actually elected them. And so, yes, there's been a lot of amazing statements that these last few days have been able to make. And for me, the summary of it is that Parliament is stronger than we have been made to think in the past, and that when Parliament wants to do, it is able to do, and that parliamentarians going forward should not be like me, who works in a civil society organization. And so the only ways to be able to express my views is through press statements and appearing on media platforms and issuing, reports and what have you. For them, they have the voice, they have the say. They are not strangers like I am in Parliament. They have various platforms and means that can make them get their minds to it. Things can be done.
Just a quick bit on the National Cathedral. I also spoke about the allocation for that. How far do you think is too far?
But you can only measure it from what the benchmark was from the beginning. So what is the baseline? I mean, I work in civil society. We would like to usually establish baseline for purpose of monitoring and evaluation. What's the baseline? At the beginning, what were we told? At the beginning, we were told that, yes, we needed to build a national cathedral, but of course, government was going to provide the land and government was going to provide, all of those.
We were told about seed money, and initially we saw a figure of 25 million, which was heavily contested. But after the 25 million, there have been so many add-ons and so many allocations year on year.
It's the more reason I'm saying what I'm saying. So the baseline was established on what the very wet scenario should be when it comes to seed. Then seed money moves away from being seed, a situation that the anti-corruption people consider as a high corruption risk area, if you want to use it to fund such major situations, which are not contingency by any stretch of imagination. And so for me, it starts with what the baseline was. What were we promised? What were the people of Ghana told at the very start of this as going to be the way that this cathedral will be funded? And what are we seeing now? Because leadership must be held accountable. Duty bearers must be able to account for their own words, actions, and inactions, their own commitment at the beginning of project. And when they are reneging on that, or they want to make a change, they must be humble enough to come to us and say that, look, we thought that we could be able to go through this pathway. We realize that things are different. Could we please have you, reason with us so we can make amendment? Not through the back door, not through trying to bamboozle their way through. No, it doesn't work like that.
Quickly, Al-Hassan, so your take on those two as well, what should have been allotted to the government machinery, cut down, slashed by 17 million, and the National Cathedral. And on the National Cathedral, I would like to find out from you, what can we expect to be the posturing of the minority moving forward, especially as you have caused to be jettisoned this 80 million allocation, which now will go into other things? And how will you follow up on the 80 million to ensure that it goes into what we've been told it will go into?
Well, first of all, the follow-up will be done by all of us, but yes, more especially by members of parliament who are especially responsible for the Committee on Roads and also the Communications Committee, because the appropriation that was eventually passed captured the 80 million as being redistributed between communications and roads. So I expect the committees responsible for the two to monitor it. As for the cathedral and how the House arrived at the decision to scrap the 80 million that was allocated to it, I'll urge the general public to, I think it's still online, follow the debate that, took place, on the floor of Parliament in the wee hours of yesterday. I think the debate started at about 2 a.m. or thereabout. And how I wish that it was during the daytime when people were awake to have listened to the wisdom of Dr. Kobna Donkor and that of Samuel George, using, the Bible and, quotations from the Bible to educate us all and many who followed online why this particular investment and, if you like, not just an investment, this particular scheme of government to steal people's money was just sad. I will also urge others, people to listen to Mr. Woyomi on this debate and Honorable Kodo, who dealt with the numbers and how government has turned this whole venture into a scheme just to steal money. At the end of the day, the finance minister who was on the floor and listening to the debate had no choice than to concede that it was a misplaced allocation and it had to be withdrawn and redistributed. I think that moving forward, as a minority, we will continue to ask the relevant questions. And like Sami again says, the baseline, what were we promised? And we need to keep reminding them of what we were promised. And to remind them of what we were promised is not to say that the minority does not want the president to, build a cathedral, that he promised to deliver for God. But it's just to remind him to do so within the promise that he shared with us, and also within budget, if there is any, because as we speak now, there's no budget. And for me, what people miss, the point that I think people miss, or they don't, but they are just afraid to talk about, is how President Akufo-Addo, won power in 2016. He threw in everything, did all the politics that is acceptable and unacceptable, and that is how he got elected in 2016. Look, many, for example, even on the floor, tried to make this a contest between Muslims and Christians. As some of our leaders had to caution the deputy majority leader, who went on that tangent, as if to say, oh, and government is supporting Hajj, which is not even true, and all of that. You see, there is a national mosque in this country that was built by an NGO, a Turkish NGO, yes, on government land. That, for me, was the basis of this promise of Nana Akufo-Addo to God to build a cathedral. That, for me, was what informed that wrong decision and the wrong pledge, which may have been used even in his campaign, subtly, to become president. And so in executing it, you will expect him to do it well and do it right, and not to burden all of us the way he is burdening us. Because, what justification does he have to spend the open amounts of money that he's spending, when he initially told us that it was just going to be about $25 million and government providing land? Now, we all know the cost of the buildings that were pulled down, buildings that were just 3, 4, 5 years old, housing judges, and the passport office, the cost of relocating it, and other private people who had landed property and offices around there, and how much it is costing the state to resettle all these people. And that is why, in all of this, I'm also very happy that as a minority, we succeeded in reducing the contingency vote this year, which was pegged at 1.4 billion to about 500 million. In fact, in 2016, the contingency vote operated on a zero allocation. That is what we must be seeking to do, because the finance minister, when he appeared before the ad hoc committee on his censure motion, revealed to us that a lot of thievery, a lot of misapplication can take place when you allow a lot of funds to sit in the contingency vote. And so it is remarkable that we were able to reduce the votes for 2023 from 1.4 billion to only about 500 million. We must be looking, forward to ensuring that it is further reduced in subsequent years, so that governments will not have the opportunity to bury such thievery as we are seeing in the name of the construction of a cathedral under the contingency vote.
Interesting, and the point where you talk about the unnecessary comparison between Muslims and Christians in the country is worth noting. But it's Christmas, and I'll give you the opportunity to send a message to your Christian friends and family. But let me come to you, Dr. Amachi. So that's one of the most topical, controversial issues we've discussed this year is about the National Cathedral. And the Parliament has been able to shoot down a proposal for some 80 million cedis to be allocated to it. Also because people feel that this has been one, transparent enough for us to even lend it our support. Initially, it started as something, then it metamorphoses into another. And we're not too sure even what we're doing and what the real progress is. How well do you think Parliament has handled the subject matter of the National Cathedral?
I think it should go back to the executive, and then they will want to restart it and build consensus around it. and come out clearly with what the National Cathedral stands for, how it's going to be financed, and all other related issues. But I think critically, when you start to build consensus and then you bring it to Parliament, you give everybody there the opportunity to explore the positive elements of it. And then at the end of the day, it's likely, to see the light of day. The previous approach was, to the best of my understanding, unnecessarily top-down fashion. And I like to believe that is one of the reasons why it didn't go through. I don't think even with the majority, on the quiet, some of them, were feeling fine about it, given the current economic challenges that we find ourselves in. If we prioritize issues in the context of austere times, definitely National Cathedral will wait. I think going forward, we need to build consensus around it and then move it.
Right, Dr. Amachi. So we're quickly wrapping up, but we have Andrew Ejapa-Mensah with us. He is on the majority side in Parliament and Member of Parliament for Sekondi. Good morning to you. Thank you so much for joining us, Mr. Mensah. Hello? Oh, sorry, we just lost him there. He just had the line drop. Too bad. Hopefully we can get him again. But as we wrap up this conversation, I mean, we're going for Christmas, but it's not as exciting for many people, not only because they don't have money, but there's a lot of things hanging. Usually at the end of the year, Benjamin, you would want to wrap up beautifully and know what to look forward to. But here we are, the debt exchange program, we know government has now decided
these pension funds are out.
Exempt pension funds. But that means
but
we have a bigger challenge.
Talk
exactly.
with them about what alternatives there are.
Yeah, so the bigger challenge is, will we be able to achieve what we want to achieve? Will we be able to reach that level of debt sustainability that will grant us, which is very crucial.
Without which we can't have an IMF program.
And that's why I'm saying that we are wrapping up the year, but not really wrapping up the major issues. You would have wanted that going into next year, we have a clear head, we know where we are going. So gentlemen, I'll take your quick thoughts on that as we look forward to 2023 and all that's left hanging on our shoulders. But I know that we've been able to reach I said angel.
Andrew Ejapa-Mensah.
Christmas is about angels, isn't it? Mr. Mensah, thank you so much for joining us again. And
good morning, Dennis.
Good morning to have you here. So we've been discussing Parliament and the performance of your colleagues and yourself. We've had a few ratings here and there. I'd like to start off with you, and then you could give us your general overview of what Parliament has been like for you. And then if there are any things you'd want to react to, we'll gladly take them quickly. So how would you rate the performance of Parliament on a score of 1 to 10?
Well, Bernice, let me say good morning to your good self once again, and to my friend Benjamin, and to your cherished viewers. Indeed, I called in to your producer to specifically respond to some statements that my good friend Lansah made on your show. But before I respond to that, as you've asked me, I think that Parliament largely has done well. There's been some unfortunate incidents that I felt we could have handled much more better. There's been decisions that we've taken that, if you listen carefully to Lansah, he himself admits in large measure that led to significantly the economic crisis that we're facing this time around, especially when he makes reference to the comments that His Excellency the President made at our Congress last year, which then, according to him, led to the kind of responses that the minority put up that delayed the passage of the e-levy. It was essentially grandstanding, playing politics with the destiny of our country. Of course, when you say it, they tend to deny. But listening to him, it's a clear admission that those actions that took place during the passage of the e-levy, which then our friends on the other side declined in breach of Section 22 of the Public Financial Management Act, which enjoins Parliament to pass the appropriation, pass the budget, pass the appropriation, and pass every other revenue measure that goes to feed the budget by 31st December, has consequences on our economy in 2022. Okay, but that's in the past. Consequences we are all facing. Government has resorted to the IMF and staff level agreements reached. I'm hopeful that all the things that needs to be done to ensure that we obtain board approval in the coming months would be done so that we can work together to bring our economy back on stream. Of course, I have significant views on what took place last 2 nights, okay? But I guess that time may not permit us to deal with all of that.
Right.
But you see, look, it's good to play politics and advance our positions, forcefully and strongly. But to peddle, pardon me, barefaced lies, it's not the way to go.
What are the lies, if you can be specific and then address them quickly?
It is not true that in 2016, government operated on a zero contingency vote. It's false. It's a palpable falsehood. Indeed, it's unfortunate I came to the constituency last evening. Otherwise, I would have shown you documents if I was in Accra. During the censure motion, documents that we obtained on the uses that Mr. Mahama's presidency deployed on from the contingency vote between 2012, 2013, 2014, 2015, 2016. And so to come on air and speak to the Ghanaian people as if to say what Mr. Foriata did was untoward, and that your government in 2016 operated on a zero contingency vote, when you know very well that that assertion is false. Unfortunate. Completely unfortunate. I disagree with a whole lot of things that he said, but of course, I was not a guest on your show. Eugene, my good friend, I have been monitoring from the beginning, was the one that you tried to reach. The line has not permitted. But I think that we need to put the record straight and clear for the good people of Ghana to know what the truth is. And the truth is that in 2016, the NDC administration did not, as alleged by my good friend Suhini, operate on a zero contingency vote.
Right. Okay. But I asked you to, well, you gave us a general overview, but you didn't give us a score, but that's fine. But your quick thoughts now. You are with the governing party. You're going into the new year unsure about a lot of things. How does that make you feel? And what is the way forward? We know that the finance minister has said we have to look at other options of ensuring that we reach a sustainable debt level. As it stands now, we're not too sure what that is. If you know any information you can share with us, we'll be glad to have it. But
well,
basically,
I don't know about going into the year unsure about many things. We've gotten a budget approved. We've gotten an appropriation approved. Of course, those are all projections that year on year parliaments approve for governments to implement. My understanding is that the finance ministry is committed to pursue the policies that have been outlined in the budget to ensure that we bring our economy back to a growth path. We're going to pursue the debt sustainability program that we have rolled out. Of course, yesterday I saw in the media, indeed I listened to the press briefing where the finance minister had made some concessions. When I came on your show 2 days ago, Benjamin put it to me and I said, look, the government was going to engage with the labor front to see some middle ground that can be achieved. So we all have a win-win situation. Of course, a caveat that was issued in the press release was to the effect that both parties were going to work together, okay, after government had agreed to exempt the pension or pensions of the labor unions that they were advocating against. They were going to work together to ensure. And so as the conversation rolls out, I expect that people would see what the reality is. And make further concessions if the need arises, so that we can all work together consciously to bring back our economy on track.
So you're saying that there's nothing. We're not unsure about anything. I just gave
Not,
you
not
an
at all.
example of the.
I mean, we're going to implement the budget, unlike last year where you had your revenue budget, some of it not approved, that then led to ratings agencies downgrading your economy, subsequently being hit by the Russian-Ukraine war. That compounds your issue, performance after it was passed 3 months thereafter,
Right.
not looking up. Of course, nobody knows what is going to happen tomorrow. But all things being equal, we expect that our commitment to the implementation of the 2023 budget would begin the path of restoring our economy back to a growth path within the time frame that has been indicated by the Finance Minister.
Thank you so much for joining us. Andrew Japamesa is MP for Second D, and also with the governing New Patriotic Party. So your final words, gentlemen, looking forward to 2023, knowing all that hangs in the balance for us as a country, what are your expectations for the coming year? Let me start with you, Dr. Amache. Hello, Doc. Kindly unmute your device.
Yeah. I'm saying that we're going to continue with the merry-go-round. Actually, only that things are going to be, a bit more, I was going to say terrible, but I wanted to simply reduce the impact a little. But things aren't going to be very good economically for the good people of Ghana. Anytime you have to work with the IMF, it means you're going to go through austere times economically. So that is what I think Ghanaians should prepare themselves for. And now that we are not through with this debt restructuring thing,
right?
Then, we simply are not sure. Just like you said, what the future has for us.
Thank you so much for your time this morning, Samuel Bing. Let me come to you. What are you looking forward to in 2023, and what should we also be bracing ourselves for?
Well, for me, my 2023 expectations will be more focused on Parliament, obviously. I'm biased, as someone who works for an organization, Parliamentary Network Africa. I think that Parliament will be very critical in our 2023 and beyond. Especially as we work ourselves as a country out of the current situation we find ourselves in, with IMF possibly coming in and all of that. We have seen literature across the globe on how parliaments play a role in these processes when a country finds itself there. And so parliamentary accountability, for me, would be the order of the day for 2023. How do we hold that co-equal branch of government, the legislature, to account as much as we hold the executive branch to account? It's by our executive branch to account. But as a co-equal branch of government, the legislature must also be held, to account. So, the people have huge expectations. Whatever happened 2 days ago and whatever kind of budget has been passed and the things that were disallowed, when you posted on social media and you engage on social media platforms, many people are saying, this is great. However, would our parliament be able to see these things through? Would they monitor it effectively? Would they ensure that the executive branch does not do what they have been told not to do? And so those things will be monitored. We'll be monitoring how Parliament, goes back to issues that it's supposed to deal with. The honourable member for Dom Kwabinye's situation, together with the others who were cited for who were taken to the Privileges Committee for absence, we still would put fire to the feet on Parliament to let us know what kind of conclusion they brought to on the debacle of January 7th. There is still the issue of committees of Parliament and the kinds of work that are before them and whether they are living up to expectations. I think that needs to be checked, even including the Right Honourable Speaker as the third most powerful, person of the land, handling another co-equal branch of government, not from the ruling party. I think that he must also not escape accountability together with the parliamentary service. So all of these things will have to come, to the fore. And for me, 2023 will be one of those years that Parliament must show that indeed it is important in the entire, governance architecture of our country, and that wherever we find ourselves now, if we will get out of it, we can only get out of it with the collaboration and the help and the support of the Parliament of Ghana.
Right. Thank you. Merry Christmas to you, Samuel Bing. God willing, next year we are back again monitoring Parliament. Let me end with you, Alhassan Suhini. And on the note of what the next year holds for us, and what you'd like to share with your Christian family and friends.
Bernice, I just took a second look of your dress and you look amazing. I think that you must pay extra for that outfit. It's gorgeous.
Thank you, Alhassan. Merry Christmas to you too.
I admire the confidence with which my brothers in the MPP, especially Andrew Mesha, can't deny or denounce things that are said that they find unpleasant, especially about their government, without providing any contrary evidence. They just deny and denounce it strongly, and then it is in their mind supposed to be treated as a fact because they say so. In fact, I was expecting you to ask him to give us the contingency vote for 2016, since he says that it wasn't zero. And what was it? I have given a figure. He just says it wasn't zero.
Well, he did mention that he didn't have the documents on hand, but we will try and get it.
So without I said it's zero. I mean, if he doesn't have a figure, the fact that he says it's not zero doesn't make it the truth.
Fair point.
But I admire the force with which he's. I admire the force with which he says it. And then he talks about, he ignores the fact that the president was irresponsible in his comments after the appropriation was passed in 2022. He ignores the fact that the comment was irresponsible. And then he accuses the minority of grandstanding, as if to say grandstanding necessarily is irresponsible. Grandstanding is part of politics. But the fact, however, is that the minority was not even grandstanding. We were actually opposed to a tax handle that we thought was going to distort our tax policies in this country, and clearly one that was not supported by majority of Ghanaians. And time has, vindicated us. The output of that tax handle and how much government is getting from it has actually vindicated the positions that we took. And so they must just, for once, hold themselves responsible for some of the mess that they have put us in, instead of always seeking for, the next person to blame. But having said that, yes, we have been told that pension funds will not be touched as far as the, DSA is concerned, the discussions around it is concerned. That is for the future, but we have to survive today before we can even think about, our pensions. And it is quite disheartening that we are even in this conversation to look for, where the shortfall will come from. Because if pension funds are not going to be touched, it means there's going to be a certain, fallout that has to be taken care of, by all of us. So it tells us that our burden is not even over. What we know, the haircuts that we are already going through is not all that we are going to take into 2023. Because the conversation to find out where the shortfall will come from is an indication that we may even be getting Sakura and not just Punky Joe and all of that. But we pray that the good Lord who has preserved us and kept us throughout 2022 will continue to abide with us and bless us as we move into 2023. And let me take this opportunity to wish all constituents of Tamale North and beyond a Merry Christmas and a happy New Year, especially the Christian fraternity in the Tamale North constituency and beyond. Merry Christmas to everyone, and I wish you all a prosperous New Year.
Right, thank you so much, Alhassan Sihini, there, wishing all of us a Merry Christmas. Well, from Benjamin and I, we've been doing so since the beginning of the week, talking about Christmas and all. And we'll be back to talk more about Christmas because the Fright Hall Joy FM Family Party in the Park is the perfect place for your family. It's happening on the 26th of December at the Ibri Botanical Gardens at 9 a.m. till you decide you've had enough fun. It's 100 cedis for a family of 6. Come on. You can purchase your ticket from the Joy FM front desk or dial the short code *713*003# select 1 and select Joy Party in the Park, or call 026-512-5318 for enquiries. The Joy FM Family Party in the Park is sponsored by Frital Sunflower Cooking Oil. Enjoy the goodness of tasty meals. Fortune Rise, always on point, just like Mom. Alliance Life Insurance, we secure your future. Syntex Tank, strong, tough, and supported by ATL, bringing fabrics to life. Mobile Doctors GH, the doctor at your home. Ghana AIDS Commission, condomless sex is risky. If it's not on, it's definitely not in. Kwame Start, the medicine that works. Joy FM Family Party in the Park, your #1 family outdoor event. For ticket reservation, please call 054-010-6466. Tickets are running out really fast, and so you want to just purchase one and secure a spot for yourself and your family. We'll be back with more. Do stay.